This is Chasing the Horizon, a podcast by, for, and about motorcyclists. Welcome to Chasing the Horizon, a podcast by, for, and about motorcyclists, brought to you by the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. Subscribe in iTunes or stream from the website at bmwmoa.org/podcast. My name is Wes Fleming. Thanks for joining us for the first episode of 2018. The response to the podcast has been better than I ever expected, and we recently topped 12,000 listens. I have to thank everybody for tuning in. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell everybody. I found out the other day that even people who don't ride motorcycles listen to the podcast, so you can tell those people too. Anyway, as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about the podcast, and I'm excited about 2018. Never one to pass up an opportunity for self-improvement, I've made it one of my goals for 2018 to get some rider training. My plan is to take 2 road courses and 2 off-road courses, one of each in the spring and again in the fall. Right now, at the beginning of the year, I'm not sure what classes I'll be taking, but the 2 at the top of my list are a weekend road class with Jim Ford's Riders Workshop right here in Virginia, and an off-road class from the Riding Academy at Moto Duo Adventures in Tennessee. Now that we've hit the switch, it's a good time to review your gear. Check your helmet for its build date. Common industry advice is to replace your helmet when it's gotten to be 5 years old. If your helmet isn't that old, you still might be due to replace the liner, the cheek pads, or a visor. Check your other riding gear for failed seams, torn pockets, missing snaps, or broken zippers. Winter is a good time to replace these things, as a lot of dealers and retailers will be putting things on sale to clear room on the shelves for new merchandise coming out in 2018. Getting into the news here, the first thing I'm going to talk about is
electricity, 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 electricity.
As a recent convert to KTM, I'm a little more aware of what they're doing as a company than I used to be. So news about their Freeride EXC continues to attract my attention. They recently held a press event to debut the second generation of this off-road bike. And even though I wasn't invited this time, I dug up what info I could about it. KTM is coming off its 7th straight year of modest growth, and in 2017 they sold over 230,000 motorcycles worldwide, generating $1.81 billion of revenue. They employ over 5,500 workers in facilities all over the world and run the company from their headquarters in Austria. They had to bring on dozens of specialists to attack the electric motorcycle market, and now they're looking at a refined, zero-emissions off- and on-road bike. You put street tires on it, you've got a slick and silent commuter or even a hooligan bike. The Freeride EXC doesn't have a price tag on it yet, but it should be in dealerships later this year. This new version comes equipped with a battery made by Sony and an engine that recharges the battery a little when the rider isn't actively on the throttle. KTM claims to have increased the battery capacity by 50% over the first generation bike, and they're putting the performance characteristics in line with a 250cc two-stroke. So think about 25 horsepower and about 31 foot-pounds of torque. They also widened the handlebars, improved the brakes, and spent a lot of time on refining the performance and handling of the bike. They've even figured out a way to recycle the batteries they're using when they reach the end of their service life through an agreement with another Austrian company called Saubermacher. The Freeride EXC is street legal, and KTM says it has no plans for a more street-oriented version of this electric bike. As electric bikes look more and more to be a big part of our future as riders, I think we all ought to be paying attention to this bike from Austria. Now, you can't report on the motorcycle industry in the United States without mentioning Harley-Davidson, but all I have for you this time is the news that Harley filed a bunch of trademark requests in the last couple of weeks, theoretically to protect the names of models that it has in its pipeline. Now, you can't really tell too much from trademark applications, but it does kind of tip the hand at what they might be planning. In the US, they trademarked the name Bronx, and in Europe, they protected the names 48X and Pan America. The 48X looks to be a variation of their 48, while the Pan America would seem to be a straight-up touring bike, though geared for the European market, but playing off that, North American pastiche. As for the Bronx, rumors are that they're working on a jazzed-up version of something not terribly unlike the Street 750, so we could be looking at a bike aimed squarely at the millennial market. Harley says that it plans on releasing 100 new models by 2027, so who knows what they're planning. Before we get on to this episode's discussion, I just want to add one more thing. One of my Facebook friends posted something the other day noting that it was so many days until pitchers and catchers reported for Major League Baseball's spring training. I didn't pay too much attention because you don't have to twist a throttle to hit a home run, but it did make me wonder something that I did go look up. If you're listening to this podcast on the first day it's available, January 8th, 2018, then there's just 42 days until World Superbike and Supersport teams report to Phillip Island in Australia for the first official training session of the 2018 season. That happens on February 19th, and the first race takes place the following weekend. I'm excited to see if Jonathan Ray can repeat his dominance of the circuit for another season. The discussion in this episode is a little longer than usual because since I sat down with Paul Guillien of Touratech USA last summer, the parent company, Touratech AG, had some financial problems. I talked to Paul on the phone last week to get his take on what went on, and that phone-terview follows our discussion. Stick around for all of it. Okay, so I'm here today for the interview portion of the podcast with Paul Guillien from Touratech. He's a West Coaster, so since I'm an East Coaster, there's a lot for us to talk about. And we're going to start talking about motorcycles and all that kind of stuff. So, Paul, I want to welcome you to the podcast here, and thanks for sitting down with us for a little while to talk.
Thanks, Wes, for having me on. Yeah, we'll see if we can find a common language between the West Coast and the East Coast.
Well, let's start with motorcycles. Tell me about what was your first motorcycle?
Yeah, my first motorcycle unfortunately didn't happen. I had a paper out and I saved up all my money and I wanted an XR100 more than anything else in the world.
Yeah.
And my parents just wouldn't let me buy the motorcycle. So the best thing I had was my neighbors had XR100s, so I sometimes say that was my first bike. But the real story is my parents wouldn't let me buy a motorcycle because they're dangerous.
Yeah.
And so I've been punishing them for that decision by working in the motorcycle industry for the last 12 years.
Nice. So when you did finally get to buy a motorcycle for yourself, what was it?
Oh, yeah, it was a BMW, of course. I had the
good answer.
The G650X Cross Challenge. So
no kidding. Isn't that the one they only made it like 1 year?
1 year, yeah. It was 2007, and I bought it secondhand, of course, in 2009. And then shortly after that, I did the Oregon Backcountry Discovery Route with Tom Myers, Helge Peterson, and Sterling Norring. Mm-hmm. And that changed my life and led to the BDRs and gave us some great stories to tell in the booth at the Touratech, some of the adventures we had out there. And that was the bike I rode for several years until I rode an F800, and then I kind of stopped riding the 650 because I fell in love with the 800. And
do you still have the 650? Is it sitting in the corner of the garage ignored somewhere?
It is still in the family at Touratech. It's on its third owner, Touratech employee. So, yeah, I sold it to Luann in our warehouse order fulfillment team, and nice. She had it for a number of years, and then she sold it to Aaron, who's on our customer service and sales team. So, yeah, it's still in the family.
Awesome. Yeah, those are really fantastic bikes, and I see very few of them in the shop. They seem to just get ridden. So I think that was a good choice. And then you stepped up to the F800. Is that what you have now?
Right now, the only bike in my garage personally is a KTM 250 two-stroke dirt bike. Part of my job at Touratech is riding all the new bikes and getting to the new ones, because that's what customers want to talk about. They don't want to talk about my 2007 Cross Challenge. No. They want to know, what do you think of the new, the water box or the new F800 or whatever. And so I get to ride all the new bikes. That's one of the perks of the job. Even last week, we got the new KTM 1090 Adventure R.
Right.
And so I got to go out with Jimmy Lewis and do some, riding impression. We made a video. It'll be out soon. But so I'm spoiled. I get to ride all of them. And so I don't spend my own money and keep one in the garage that I never ride because I'm always out riding the Touratech bikes. So.
Right. And so what bikes are in Touratech's garage right now?
So we've got Water Boxer, so the water-cooled GS. It's our second one. We have an F800 GS, which I've ridden that on most of the BDR projects.
I've seen lots of pictures of that bike with you on top of it.
Yeah, I've put more miles on the F800 than any other adventure bike. We had an 1190, which we just sold to get the 1090, so we can check out that, see which parts fit on the new bike. We've had a Tenere. We recently sold that. We've had a KLR. So right now we're kind of looking forward to whatever bike comes out from BMW next. We're not sure what it is, but as soon as the new one comes out, we'll get rid of the F800 and get whatever the new one is. So
yeah, I think if I knew, I'd tell you.
Yeah. No kidding.
So have you had much of a chance to ride the 1090, the KTM 1090?
Yeah, I did. I spent a couple of days riding it with Jimmy Lewis up at the Touratech Rally West. We had one there, and it's pretty good. It's exciting. It's definitely stepping up the game on the 21-inch front wheel bikes. That's what I like. That's why I spend all the time on the F800 is because of the 21-inch front wheel. And then last year I actually got a chance to ride the Africa Twin on the Nevada BDR project, so that's the other bike we currently have. Spent a lot of time on that, really liked it, and then the 1090 came out, and it's good. They're different. I actually want to make a comparison video. I want to really ride them side by side, but they're both really good bikes, and I'm hoping that BMW comes out with something that's a little more power than the 800 and just a little more modern. That's pretty old technology now. It came out in 2008, 2009, so they're ready for an update, and I'm hoping they come out with it, because I'm sure that's what I'll ride on, a BDR soon.
Yeah. I've seen some spy photos, and you hear rumors and things like that they're going to bump it up a little closer to 900 cc's. But BMW is traditionally very close with that information, and they don't have leaks.
Yeah.
So we'll probably all find out at the same time, unless somebody makes a huge mistake. So I know that with the 1190s, the KTM 1190s, I rode a couple of those, and man, that rear cylinder just roasts your crotch a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the first thing when I rode that for the first time at the KTM Rally a few years ago when it first came out, and they were keeping that bike going all day long. Mm-hmm. So, and I got on it, and I was only on it a half hour, and I got off, and I was dancing like I was on fire because my thighs were burning. The 1090, they've done some things to eradicate that problem. I don't know if they've eradicated it, but they've managed to minimize it. They've minimized it. There's some cowling and stuff, and Jimmy and I both commented like, we didn't notice it. Like, it never crossed our mind, there's that heat again.
Yeah.
So they've done some things to improve that, which they really needed to do. It was a little too hot.
Yeah, it really was. The ones that I rode were in the summertime, and I'm here riding this. It's an amazing motorcycle. The 1190 really is an amazing motorcycle, but all you can think about is that heat right between your legs, because it just takes up so much of your attention.
Yeah.
And I know Indian is having a little bit of an issue, and of course now those are cruisers, they're not dual sports, but a lot of people are putting heat management in place to just survive that rear cylinder. So I'm glad to hear that the 1090 is addressing that a little bit. Now, you mentioned the BDR and you mentioned the Touratech Rally, so I want to talk about both of those things. You guys have been in on the BDR from the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, we really took the concept and ran with it back in 2010. There was a route created, almost 20 years ago called the Oregon BDR, and it kind of lived in obscurity. Tom Myers, the original owner of Touratech USA, he had ridden it in like 1999 and 2000, did a little review online back when that was the only discussion of it online. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people read about that, and so he and I did that back in 2009 when I was new to the company. I had a background in motorcycle industry, but not in adventure bikes. So we just went out there and did it for a week with Helge and Sterling, and that kind of started it. And then some other guys we didn't even know, had the idea to create a Washington route. And, they were just drinking beer in a bar, shooting, BSing about, their passion, motorcycles. And so they hatched a plan to create a Washington BDR route. they had seen our YouTube videos, which was part of the inspiration for it, and they wanted to make a film, of course, and they needed someone to pay for it, so they called Touratech. Said, hey, how do you guys feel about paying for the film for the Washington BDR? And we were like, absolutely, let's do it. So we became a part of the project, and we did that one. And before we even finished Washington, we were already daydreaming about what would be the next one, which all of us had spent time in Utah mountain biking and hiking and things, and we just knew that had to be the next one because that state is so rich. And now here we are, 8 years later, we've just finished our 7th route, which was the Nevada BDR, and we're packing our bags here shortly to go do the Mid-Atlantic BDR, which will be the next one.
You're coming on my way.
Coming your way.
Okay. What states are you going to hit?
Most of it is going to be in Pennsylvania, Virginia. I've got some other guys building the route, so I don't even know exactly where it goes, but it's right there in the Mid-Atlantic. The idea is we'll have it in the central part, and then eventually we'll put one north of there,
right
to the Canadian border, and then we'll put one south of there, hopefully down to the Gulf of Mexico. We'll see if we can get there.
There you go.
But the idea is just to show the best that part of the U.S. has, the best off-road riding. There's going to be more pavement on the East Coast route than we normally have.
Sure.
But it's remote. It's got a lot of character, rich history, and the guys who've been scouting it are pretty stoked about it. So
awesome.
I look forward to riding it here in a month or so.
Yeah, well, I look forward to picking it up because that's where I live.
Yeah.
I'm an hour and a half-ish from the Blue Ridge Parkway, and I'm near the Shenandoah National Park and, George Washington National Park and all those kind of stuff. Some fantastic roads. But let me ask you a question about the BDR, because my experience with BDR is talking to Bill Wiegand, who went on one of the BDR trips with you. He got a little beat up on that ride, but he
Just
survived.
a little.
And I reviewed the Idaho package when it came out, the video and the map and all that. And of course, before the big MOA rally in Salt Lake City this year, I bought several maps. I bought the Butler Road map and the BDR map for Utah, so that I could put them, know more about them before I wrote the article about them. And plus, you never know. I'm a map hound. I love maps. I tack them up to the wall and just look at them. Hey, I might go there someday. So I have an R1200 GS, but I have 100% street tires. I have Michelin Pilot Roads trails on my bike. I don't ride off-road. Somebody like me approaching a BDR concept, let's say I'm going to take a month off of work and I'm going to go to Utah and I'm going to ride the BDR route. How does somebody like me who has almost no dirt experience survive that? Or not survive, but enjoy that kind of ride? I got to assume it's possible. So what does a street rider do to tackle a BDR?
Yeah, you approach it the same way someone that looks at a big mountain wants to climb the mountain, say Mount Rainier or Mount McKinley. And that is that you don't just go climb Mount McKinley. You start by doing some hikes, getting in shape, learning the gear, learning what to pack, what not to pack, and then you do an overnighter, and then you do maybe a couple of nights, and you slowly build up to it by building the skills, the riding skills, but also the knowledge of how to deal with the problems that you're going to come across, or the issues, whether it's weather or mechanicals or something like that. And you just make it an end goal, but don't make it your first foray into it. Riding schools are a great resource, so get the rider training if you don't have much off-road experience. Also, bike choice can make a big difference. Mm-hmm. So I encourage people to start on lighter bikes if they're new to it. I've had, I give a lot of presentations on BDRs, and I've had guys come up to me afterwards that told me the route was too hard and they really struggled in it. And then I find out that they were new to off-road riding. They brought, the 1200 GSA,
Adventure.
And they're a pretty small guy, smaller than me, and it was just a combination of tackling too difficult of a route on too big of a bike with not enough experience.
Yeah.
So But it's a great excuse to get into the off-road riding, and there's lots of riding schools, and there's lots of events like, the Touratech Rally and the GS Giants, and a lot of places where you can go for a weekend and do group rides, where there's people there to help you pick up the motorcycle. Sometimes the routes have degree of difficulty where you can pick the beginner route rather than the advanced route. And the other thing is not all BDR routes are equal. There are some that are easier. There are some that are more difficult. And so the BDR team team can help you kind of pick routes that are maybe the best place to start, rather than
based on your level of skill.
Yeah.
All right, that's really cool. So you said you're getting ready to do which one? I already forgot.
Mid-Atlantic.
Mid-Atlantic is the next one. So that's exciting. And if you're out my way, let me know. Maybe I can show you around a little bit. I live right outside of Richmond, so it's a city with a tremendous amount of history built into it. And it's a fantastic place.
Yeah,
but you'll enjoy the riding in Pennsylvania. So when you're in Pennsylvania, are you going to be tying that trip in with the Touratech East Rally? Or is it going to...
No, we're actually going through some similar areas. So we have the Touratech Rally East near the Bald Eagle State Forest.
Okay.
And there's another state forest, I can't remember the name of it, but it's about 25 minutes outside of State College. So we're on some private land out there. It's a very historic farm, and we just camp there and have the clinics and classes and all the normal stuff. We have a Touratech Rally, but the riding there is really fantastic in those state forests.
Yeah,
They've got some really good roads, and they even have this thing called dual sport single track, which I've never even heard of. They don't let us organize rides on that, but it's out there and it's on the maps, and you can go ride it on your own or with your buddies. But it's some of the most fun I've ever had on an adventure bike was following Mike Lafferty on big bikes through this single track that had larger radiuses. It was a little more clear, but oh my God, it was so much fun. So they got incredible stuff out there.
Great. Now, by the time this podcast is out, the Touratech East Rally will have already happened. And right now, when we're talking in mid-July, the Touratech West Rally has already happened. So they'll be coming up next year, and the Touratech West Rally is the last weekend in June, correct?
Every year. And then the Touratech East Rally is going to be in mid-August every year, or as long as you keep doing it. I hope you do one East and West. It makes people, it's so that, I don't have to take 3 weeks off to go to the rally and ride home. So how are the rallies going? How long have you been doing them? And what do you see in the Touratech Rally future? We've been doing it 7 years on the West Coast, and this will be our third year on the East Coast. For us, this is our customer appreciation weekend. So we rent this giant field, at least on the West Coast. It's a big field that's surrounded by mountains. It's this perfect little town. It's not big enough to even have a stop sign or a traffic light, but it does have a restaurant, a store, a gas station, and a hardware store.
And that's all you really need.
Yeah, it's like a wide spot in the road. The landowner there is really incredible. His goal and our goal is every year to make the event better than the previous year, and so we had a lot more space this year. We created what we call the Black Forest Funduro course. So we actually laid out like an enduro style course for big bikes in the woods on premise at our event. Nice. And it was about a mile long loop, and so you could go out there, and it was slow speed, technical, no jumping over logs, nothing crazy, but just low speed, going through. We had the actual enduro arrows, that the guys have in the enduro competition courses, and that was a big hit. So that was something that was new. Just every year we try and make it better. We had the Honda and the KTM factory trucks there doing demo rides, but the core of the event is group rides. So each day on the menu you can sign up for a group ride and go out with 8 or 10 people. We had 11 different routes that were available. We have GPS tracks, so you can just take the GPS tracks and go with your buddies, or you can go with an organized group. So we have 2 days of group rides, and then we have all kinds of clinics and classes, from presentations by like Simon and Lisa Thomas, Helge Peterson. We had a backcountry chef cooking competition this year.
Nice.
There's always tire changing classes. Jimmy Lewis was there doing tire changing classes. We also offer off-road training. So we had 3 different training schools there offering classes to improve your skills. And then kind of the pinnacle of the event is in the evening we have these little challenge competition things, similar to like the GS Giant competition. We have a challenge course that we've built that's got sand, gravel, hills, logs, and we run guys and girls, women through there. In fact, this year we had a woman who made it to the finals who was an incredible rider. And so we do that one night, and then the other night is the slow races, which ends up always being the favorite. We change the rules, but it's basically a short course. Who can go the slowest without dabbing. And sometimes we do, 2 at a time, sometimes 6 at a time. Sometimes when they get into the finals, we'll make the guys switch bikes and do all kinds of crazy tricks. And Jimmy Lewis and I, the last 2 years, have emceed that and kind of, have a lot of fun with the competitors.
Nice. That's really cool. How many people show up to these things?
The Rally West is the largest gathering of adventure motorcycles in the entire country. So this year we had over 800. I think it was 840, something like that. Almost everyone comes on a motorcycle. Almost everyone sets up their tent and sleeps there on site. And, we usually have live music or a DJ and things like that. There's always stuff to go, stuff to do. We have bonfires at night. It's really just about, Touratech is about riding motorcycles, camping, and good times around the fire. That's like the DNA of our company. And so that's what this whole event is about, is just hanging out with our customers around the bonfire, riding motorcycles, and sleeping in tents.
And what's the attendance at the East one like? I know you've only done 2 of them so far.
Yeah, we expect to have over 250 at this year's event.
So small but growing.
Yep, every year it gets bigger, and it's a little different format. That one's a little more remote, so we can't find any food trucks willing to go out there. So we have a catering option where you can sign up for the food plan, and we got some local restaurants that cook the meals for us.
Well, that's good that you get into the logistics that deep that if people don't want to leave the site, they don't have to.
Yeah, both of our rallies have food on site. So at the Rally West, there's a restaurant that's right across the street, and then there's usually 2 or 3 food trucks there. And then the East Coast one, there's a restaurant down the street, and then we've got a caterer that does meals if people want that.
Nice. So I know my first experience when I bought my first R1100 GS, my first experience with Touratech was products. So I know you've got a really cool lifestyle magazine that comes from Touratech Germany, or Mothership, or whatever you guys call it. You've got the rallies, the BDR. You've got your fingers in a lot of pies, but ultimately Touratech is about making our motorcycles more suitable for the kind of riding that we like to do, especially hard riding and off-road riding. So one of the things I've always been curious about is, how do you decide to develop a new product? Do you have to identify a weakness and then try to deal with it, or do you just find something where the OEM kind of cheaped out a little bit and went with plastic or rubber, and you think that maybe should be a hard part? What's that process like?
Yeah, the process is the same as it has been for the last 25 years, and that is that the founders of Touratech in Germany, they ride adventure motorcycles, and so they started the company. Basically, they were touring, doing these extended trips through Africa, and they were having failures on the road, whether it was a luggage failure or a oil cooler going out, and so they just started making things just for their own personal bikes to get them through these 3-4 month trips through Africa, and then they would come home and their friends would see these things, these modifications. They'd say, hey, I want that for my bike. So they started making them for their friends and family. And the next thing you know, it turned into a business.
Then you got a business, yeah. And now you have to have a factory.
And now there's 300 people in the Black Forest that are 100% dedicated to just making aftermarket accessories for motorcycles. So Herbert still gets out and does these extended trips. He oftentimes gets a new motorcycle, usually a prototype from the manufacturers like BMW. Sweet. He'll get it 6 months before they actually produce it, for a couple of reasons. One is he can give them feedback on the production unit to see if there's any things that, in his view and with his experience, should be tweaked or improved. And then he also then sees the opportunities to make changes via aftermarket parts, guards, coolers, luggage, all kinds of things. And so it just comes from real world experience. And then, of course, now that Touratech's big enough, we've got distributors in 45 countries, and so a lot of us are out there putting the bikes through the paces, discovering problems, usually from being out there on the trail. Side stand switch gets hit by a rock, and the bike stops working. We're like, hey, Herbert, let's make a guard for this. And so they'll go to work and create a guard for it. So it's really just about solving real world problems on the bikes that we're riding.
Cool. And so what's in the pipeline for coming up in the latter part of 2017.
Yeah.
That you can talk about, because I'm sure there's stuff that you can't really talk about yet.
Yeah, they're pretty good at keeping secrets, even from me. But I guess the thing that we're most excited about right now is the new Rally Form skid plate. This is technology that no other aftermarket company is using. They use 500,000 pounds of force to smash a sheet of 4mm aluminum into this three-dimensional shape.
Gotcha.
So we can make it any shape we want. That process strain hardens the material, so it actually makes that aluminum tougher than it was when it was sheet stock. It also allows us to put all kinds of dimples and ripples and ribs and shapes that make it structurally much stronger. The other benefit is there's no welding.
Right.
Welds are typically where the cracks start. Mm-hmm. Welds are also where there's a real sharp angle, and because these are basically just squished out of a sheet, the radiuses are smooth and round, and so it just slips over obstacles really well. It's stronger, it's stiffer, and we can create more space, like between the front wheel and the motorcycle. A lot of times when people put skid plates there, it goes straight across,
right,
and it reduces that clearance. Sometimes there's problems with tires hitting or mud hitting, or you can't put the fender extension you want with these, because we can make them any shape we want. We're not limited by what a machine can bend and weld. They're three-dimensional, so we can make a glove if we want. So this basically it's a really robust glove for the underside of the motorcycle, and there's no one else doing it, so we're really excited. We just at the MOA rally this year just showed the 1200 skid plate for the first time. We've got it for the Africa Twin. It's getting close on the 1190, but we think we're going to have it for all the bikes real soon, so that's pretty exciting. Also, windscreens. We've got these rally-inspired windscreens.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah, they've got sharp angles, just like the guys racing the Dakar Rally. The reason their cowlings are shaped that way is because it gives more wind protection, gives a bigger bubble with a shorter windscreen or cowling, and so we've adapted that, or we've taken that basic idea and we're making it for clear, windscreens, and it's a really difficult thing. We've been working on that for 2 years to figure out how to make those sharp angle bends in that sort of material without having scuffs or marks and without distorting, the visibility. So when you're looking through it still looks good. And they've cracked the code on that. So now we're coming out with those windscreens for a lot of bikes. And the real benefit is you can keep a shorter windscreen, so you're not hitting your helmet on it when you're riding off road, but it puts up a nice bubble of air over your head when you're on the street. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, and it just looks really cool.
Yeah, that's one of the big problems I have with my GS is, I'm 6'3", almost 6'3". When I put my boots on, it adds another inch or two. So I end up with a lot of helmet buffeting, just from stock, even tall windshields. I use a Touratech makes a little add-on clamps on the top of your windshield, and I use that. I move it from bike to bike. I even use it on my sidecar rig, which is a K1200 RS. It's not an off-road bike. It's not even a dual sport in any sense of the way, but I used it so much on that the rubber deformed, and now I can't clamp it onto a flat windshield, so I got to buy another one, which I'll get around to. But that, even just having that little extra flip at the top has made my motorcycles a lot more comfortable. And that's one of the things that I kind of dig about Touratech, is that you guys seem to think of the little things that make the bike that much more comfortable. But you also do big things. You do suspension, and you do seats, and you do luggage, and all that kind of stuff. So just from a logistical standpoint, how big is your warehouse? How do you keep track of all that stuff?
Yeah, we typically stock almost 4,000 items here in the U.S. Germany is a long ways away, and we try and help the customers by having the stuff on hand. When we can get it from Germany, we have it in our warehouse, and oftentimes we actually forecast things many months in advance, and we'll order the product that you're buying today. Sometimes was forecasted and ordered 6 months prior, just so that we can make sure that we have it. So yeah, that's a big part of the game. Yeah, it's a lot of different products, and they're always changing as the new bikes come out and that. So yeah, we're in about 9,000 square feet of just warehouse space. Fortunately for us, most of our parts are pretty small, so you'd be surprised how much we have in a small area, because a lot of them are just like the windscreen spoilers you're talking about. They don't take up much room. No. So we're lucky. We do have some rooms that are just full of panniers. That's the only thing that's in there because they're so big and bulky. But most of the stuff's pretty small.
So with all that warehouse space, with all those products, if you had to kind of put your finger on the 2 or 3 items that you sell the most often, are they big? Are they small? What would you say that those most purchased products are?
Yeah, luggage systems are always a huge one for us. The Zega Pro pannier and the Zega Mundo, the newer, lower price point version. Those are the perennial favorites. We have a tremendous amount of warehouse space allocated to those. Very popular. In recent years, the Touratech suspension has really taken off. It is a fantastic product. We have very little problem with it. I mean, it's just really, suspension is one of those things where it takes an incredible abuse.
Yeah.
Helge Peterson, he's broken every shock he's ever owned for the last 30 years, except ours. Ours is the only product that's really withstood, the rigors of one of his Globe Riders adventures, where they're riding for 70 or 80 days with full, his luggage for the trip plus his camera gear. And he's a pretty big guy. And so we've really hit the stride on that. We've got the plug and travel EZA replacement.
Right.
The stuff where the electronics just plug right into the BMW, allows, even on the new water boxers, that dynamic suspension. We've got aftermarket solutions that just plug and play with that. So it's really good stuff, and that's been a very high growth segment for us. And just it's one of those things we can just sell with absolute confidence. We just guarantee you are not going to have troubles with this. If you do send it back, we'll make it right. It's really easy. And it caused me to become a suspension snob. So now I'm so used to riding this, and it makes such a good difference. It's just this planted feeling that you have. It gives you confidence. And then when you go jump to something that is, OEM suspension, and that's no fault to any one manufacturer. I mean, the bikes would be $50,000 a piece if they made this suspension the way ours is, and the seats and the foot pegs, everything else. They've got to hit a price point, otherwise we couldn't afford them. And one of the places where it can really be improved is on suspensions. So,
well, and some riders buy a bike off the showroom floor and they never change a thing. They never touch it. They change the oil, put gas in it, and get on down the road, and it's just fine. I think that when you start getting towards you start looking a little farther out from center, whether it's body size, somebody like me that weighs quite a bit and abuses a bike like that, I need a more robust suspension than stock. Or you get somebody that rides in a fashion that isn't just down the road and around the curve. You get somebody who wants to take their bike over logs and through sand and up the side of a mountain. Then they have to pay a lot closer attention to tire selection. They have to pay attention to the tubes. They have to pay attention to their suspension. They have to pay attention to their luggage. You're going to spend time off road. You're going to be banging your side cases off of trees and rocks. And the Vario cases that BMW sold for a long time are fantastic, very innovative, expandable, but you can't bang them off a bunch of rocks. They're a plastic chassis with that aluminum outside to protect it a little bit. They're not going to be as sturdy as something like the Zega Pros because they're just not designed for that. Yeah. So it's really cool that Touratech has stuck around doing this for a long time, and there's a lot of imitators that have popped up in your wake, and I guess they always say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So hopefully you guys are flattered by that and continue to innovate and push forward as not just new bikes come out, but as new ideas emerge in both the on-road and off-road worlds.
Yeah, that's the great thing about competition is it forces everyone to step up their game, so the consumer gets better products, and that really pushes us. There's a lot of competition. We're involved in so many segments, from helmets to boots to riding suits to protection to suspension. We kind of compete with everyone, and so that's the difficult part of our job, but they all make us better. When someone comes out with a better mousetrap, then it really motivates us because we want to have the best stuff. So that's part of what keeps us going.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I wish you all best of luck with it, and I'm looking forward to attending a Touratech rally in the future. I live not too far from the east one, so I'm going to focus on that and try to get to one of those. And are you coming out for the east?
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. Bring your crew and leave the warehouse guys to do the real work, right?
That's exactly right.
One of the benefits of being the boss is that you get to do stuff.
Yeah, but we also, even at this event, we've got guys in the booth that are from our order fulfillment team. Some of them are better at selling stuff than I am, and so we pop them out of the fulfillment center and we bring them out here. And the cool thing about our entire staff rides motorcycles, so everyone in the business rides motorcycles, and it's part of what makes it fun to work with a team that you all have so much in common with.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that you kind of recognize about Touratech is that so many of the people involved ride that that they understand what's going on because you can see it in every product that you get in the mail. And the catalog is just amazing. It's gotten thicker and thicker over the years, but you guys keep sending it out for free, which is awesome. There's no complicated process to get in the catalog. People just go to the website and they basically put in a $0 order for the catalog. Can they also get the magazine as well that way?
No, we're a little stingier with the magazine, but we do give it away anytime they place an order.
So place an order, get a magazine.
So you get it two ways. Yeah, order something from us, you'll get a magazine in the shipment, or you can come to an event and we have stacks of them at the MOA rally, at the IMS shows, at the Touratech rally. So that's the other way to get them.
All right, cool. And just before we wrap up here, say the website, say the URL for the website.
Yeah, it's www.touratech-usa.com.
The dash USA is the important part.
Yes.
I always forget that, and I have to Google Touratech USA. So, all right, man. Listen, I appreciate you taking the time to sit and talk with us, and I'll see you at a rally, either ours or yours, in the near future.
Yeah, I would love to have you at one of the rallies, so let's figure out how to make that happen. Yeah, I appreciate you making time for me. It was always a pleasure.
No problem, man. Talk to you again soon.
Thanks.
Hey, Paul, thanks for joining us again several months after our first interview. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us again.
It's my pleasure, Wes.
So I really just wanted to catch up with you on the financial stuff that Touratech AG has gone through in the past 4 or 5 months or so. I know there was a lot of kind of gnashing of teeth and pulling of hair on the internet, which doesn't really tell us anything. There were some articles in German, there were some articles in English. You guys put out a couple of press releases. So I just wanted to talk to somebody firsthand and kind of get the info on what happened with Touratech AG, what that resolution was, and how any of it affects Touratech USA.
Yeah, it was quite the adventure, 2017 for Touratech. It was definitely some big surprises to us. But in hindsight, when we kind of looked at the history and the pieces, a lot of it made more sense on how that could happen. How they got into the situation. Essentially, Touratech started a couple of enthusiasts, a couple of motorcyclists that were just solving problems from their travels to Africa and various places. And so, the foundation of the company wasn't a couple of MBAs from Harvard that had an idea and got some venture capital and went and did it the way things typically happen these days.
Right.
This was a couple of guys building things on a coffee table, in their small living room in the Black Forest of Germany. So that was basically how it got started, and that was the core DNA of the company was just sort of self-made, do-it-yourself, building products, and it was a really successful recipe for them. They knew what the customers wanted because they were the customer for the products.
Right.
And then you fast forward a couple of decades, and this thing had really become an industrial enterprise with, multiple locations and huge, robotic CNC machines. They would buy up equipment from the BMW car manufacturing plant when they'd upgrade. Touratech would get the old stuff. So it was pretty sophisticated and large business, but still kind of had the same guys running it that started it on their coffee table. And so I think in some sense it got a little too big for them to run with their skill set and experience level. But also, when you have that sort of growth, it's really hard to self-fund that sort of level of increases year after year.
Oh, absolutely,
I recently read the book Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, the guy that started Nike. And for the first, 10 years of that business, it was just bouncing from one financial crisis to the other. Even though they had, 100% growth year after year after year, they just kept running out of money, and it was really tenuous, and they just barely made it a number of times. And then finally, when they went public, they got the outside money they needed to really sustain the growth. And I think, in hindsight, Touratech should have went to get the outside money or gone public or sold a piece of the company earlier to get that working capital that's needed to really sustain that kind of growth. But, that just wasn't really in their DNA. They just sort of bootstrapped it and did it themselves. And when they got to the point where they had to really do an expansion, they doubled their debt and got all new, factory, new machines, new software.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
Yeah, and they just weren't able to bring it all together to increase the output. They spent the money, they borrowed the money, bought the machines, but they just couldn't get everything to come together quick enough. And then that first busy season in the new building, they just weren't able to produce really any more volume than they were the previous year, but their rent was double essentially. So it pretty quickly got them into trouble.
Yeah, it sounds like just the kind of trouble that anybody could get into, because they're, like you said, they're not MBAs. They're making stuff. They're, kind of fulfilling their vision rather than necessarily hardcore business people.
Yeah, and one of the problems that created beyond, running out of capital was that they never really cared whether the business was profitable or not. As long as they were making enough to keep the lights on and to keep producing cool products, for them, they were living the dream. I mean, This was everything they wanted, at a personal level, and it didn't really meet the profitability standards of most capitalists. It was, and so what that created was a situation where when they did expand and have to borrow a lot of money and it didn't go right, they didn't have much cushion, because it just simply wasn't a real profitable business, because they weren't really motivated by profit. They were pretty humble guys that really were just in it because they loved the segment and they loved the brand and making products for motorcyclists.
Yeah. So can you explain a little bit about what it was they did that kind of, righted the ship?
Yeah, they basically had to get outside money.
Okay.
But instead of doing it proactively, they did it
reactively.
In the process. Yeah, they did it as a part of essentially a Chapter 11 reorganization. So they basically got to the point where they had too much debt, weren't able to make the payments or service the debt, and then to protect themselves from the creditors and to really just preserve the company, they had to use the insolvency laws, they call them in Germany, which is basically a Chapter 11 reorganization, and in the court appointed an administrator. They came in and basically fixed the easy things, like, hey, you guys have too many different products. Let's narrow down the product. Let's, there were some production issues, so they brought in some experts, some consultants to fix that. They brought in some financial consultants, and they basically fixed the easy stuff and got it ready for sale. And then they essentially sold the business to the highest bidder / best fit investor. So there were a number of companies, dozens and dozens, that took a real hard look at it. And it came down in the final. There was 3 or 4 that were making binding offers, and there was one that was just really stood out from everyone else. They were the first offer. They ultimately were the highest offer, and they just really wanted it because it was a good fit for what they were looking for in their experience, and they had the confidence of the courts, and they had the money behind them, and so they were sort of the winning bid. And that company is called Happich. It looks like Happich.
Gotcha.
But the C is soft, so Happich. And so yeah, those are the guys that bought it, and they took over, or essentially, they became the owners on January 1st, and so they're finishing what the court administrators and consultants started, making it a good, viable business again, getting the production fixed. They definitely dramatically narrowed down the product range, so the catalog will probably be about half the size that it was in the past, and that was a big part of the problem, is they were trying to do too many things, too many products under one roof, and it just wasn't really impossible to do what they were trying. And so these guys have a very extensive manufacturing background. They know quality assurance programs. They know how to produce things, and they really have a lot of expertise in it. So they've brought in people from their other business that they know and trust, that have the experience, and they're basically running it like the industrial, enterprise that it really is.
Yeah, well, it sounds like everything at the corporate level has turned out okay. How did any of this affect you guys at Touratech USA?
It certainly was stressful for us, just the uncertainty, not knowing what was going on, not knowing, if it was going to be bought or how it was going to be bought, who would be involved. But I knew that somehow it would shake out because I knew the brand was really strong. We've got importers in 45 countries, so there's this really powerful distribution channel, and it was a pretty good deal for anybody that that had the dough to invest in it and had the expertise and the confidence that they could fix the problems that existed. And so for us, it was mostly emotional consternation on our end. The product kept flowing. We've actually seen a decrease in our back orders to customers, so the number of customers that are waiting in line for products here has gone down over the last few months. So that's been positive, and we think it'll get much better here in the near future. So we're actually pretty excited. The cool thing is they still have the new production facility that they built. They have all the new state-of-the-art machines, new software and technology. They built a new distribution center, and so they have all those great assets, and now they also have the financial backing of this much bigger company and lots of manufacturing expertise and experience with supply chain management. So we think the future is going to be quite bright for us and for our customers, who are going to be able to get product much more reliably than we have been able to do in the last couple of years.
Excellent. Yeah, I noticed that I had gone on the website looking for some mirrors for my bike, and they were back ordered, and so I put my email address in. You got a little function there that says email me when this is available, and it wasn't but maybe 10 days or 2 weeks before I got the email. And, I was expecting a much longer wait. So I was really impressed by how quickly that got turned around. So it sounds like everything's going well. And I think the last question I want to ask you, because this is going to be the question on everybody's mind, when's the new catalog coming out?
I believe the new catalog will be out sometime in February. I haven't seen it. I think they haven't quite completed it, but I do know that it's going to be far fewer pages. It'll reflect the narrowing of the product range. For us, 80% of our sales was coming from 20% of the product range, and so they're really focusing on that. It's still going to be a lot of products. It'll be more than 1,500 products that we're still going to have, and it's the ones that we really sold the most of anyway, and the things that were more obscure. Unfortunately for the R100, R80 GS owners, we're probably going to have fewer products for those bikes, maybe no products for those bikes, but that took up a lot of the catalog, and so it'll be out very soon, and it'll be really more focused on the hot sellers for the current or more recent adventure touring bike models.
Well, and in a lot of ways that makes sense because when you focus the efforts on the majority of what sells, it gives you that opportunity to kind of not just maintain the business but grow the business without kind of having all these kind of really obscure parts. Plus, I think it also opens up a little bit of opportunity for people that are in those more obscure niches to kind of take over the mantle and do things themselves. We might see a proliferation of people that kind of pick up where Touratech is going to leave off with their focus there. So we might see somebody go, hey, that was a really great idea. I bet I can do it. And because it's being done at a smaller level, it ends up being less of a drag on a big company.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. I hope that happens because we do want to keep seeing, aftermarket parts available for some of those older models or more obscure bikes. So I hope you're right about that, and it certainly wouldn't surprise me to see that happen.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot, Paul, for taking time to talk to me again, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. I haven't forgotten about the Touratech East Rally that's coming up in Pennsylvania in later on in 2018, so I'm hoping to catch you guys when we're all there.
Sounds good, Wes. Looking forward to seeing you out there out east.
All right, man. Take it easy.
All right. Thanks.
Because this podcast is produced by the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America, in every episode I will highlight one benefit of being a member. I admit it's an enticement to get you to our website and get you to join for at least 1 year. I've been a member since 1999 and have used the member benefits to my advantage countless times since then, especially the roadside assistance program that I sign up for every year. That's not what I'm going to tell you about today. Today, it's all about the Paul B. scholarships offered by the MOA Foundation. The Paul B. Memorial Scholarship Fund has been around since 2011, and it honors the memory of Paul Bayshorts. Paul loved riding, and he was an active MOA member as well as a regular participant in the BMW Motorcycle Owners of Vermont. It was his fellow Vermonters that set up the Paul B. Scholarship, and the MOA Foundation has continued to fund the scholarship to further its mission supporting rider safety, education, and training. Any rider can apply for a Paul B. Scholarship. For MOA members, the Paul B. Scholarship provides $250 towards the cost of any recognized motorcycle training program. People who aren't MOA members can receive a $100 scholarship. The MOA Foundation has a committee that reviews all requests, and you can download the application and get the email address to send it to by visiting the Foundation's Paul B. webpage at bmwmoa.org/PaulB, PAULB. Rules and restrictions apply, of course, so be sure to visit the webpage to get all the information. The website again is bmwmoa.org/PaulB. You can get one Paul B. scholarship per calendar year, and since it's January, it's a good time to start thinking about your training classes for 2018. I want to thank you for coming back for the 12th episode of Chasing the Horizon, which featured a discussion with Paul Guillien of Touratech USA. Our next episode will feature Sam Manicom, author and world traveler. That episode will be out on January 22nd. All the links I mentioned in this episode will go out in an email from our mailing list. You can sign up for the mailing list at tinyletter.com/chasingthehorizon. Signing up for the mailing list won 3 people copies of a cool motorcycle film on DVD, and you never know what drawings will happen in the future. Andrew Finberg composed and recorded our theme music. Karen Halker designed our logo. The piece of the 1979 Schoolhouse rock song Electricity, Electricity was written by Bob Doro and played by Goodness on the 1996 Schoolhouse Rock Rocks album. Thanks again to all our guests and listeners for giving us their time. We'll see you out there somewhere on the road or off it. Ride safe.